Pokédex entries are kind of insane, folks. I know this is not an original observation, there's many videos about such a topic, but I'm not talking about the well-known ones. We all know about Drifloon and the controversial activities it gets up to. I'm sure we're all aware of Cubone and the sad story of a grieving child. But I've been amazed at the strange details present in the most random Pokédex entries. Some of them are actually quite creative and interesting. Some are bizarre, like I don't believe anybody asked about these details. Why don't we just get into an example of what I'm talking about? I was shocked when I read the Pokédex entry for the Pokemon Hoothoot in my recent Pokemon Nuzlocke challenge. I've been reading the Pokédex entries when I catch the guys, and the lore behind Hoothoot was a shock to me. It shook me to my core. Here it is from the Ruby and Sapphire Pokédex. Hoothoot has an internal organ that senses and tracks the Earth's rotation. Using this special organ, this Pokemon begins hooting at precisely the same time every day. What in the world is that, folks? I have so many questions. Don't, like roosters in the real world, they make a cuckoo sound at the same time every day. They don't need an internal organ that senses the Earth's rotation to do that. That seems like a lot of evolutionary effort. This organ is doing a monumental task here just so he can hoot. Evolving in such a way to specifically hoot on a consistent schedule is unbelievable work, and it's given me a newfound respect for Hoothoot and the species that I never had before. This isn't that far off what real birds could do, though. Apparently they can sense the magnetic field of the Earth, which is kind of like sensing the Earth's rotation, I guess. Birds are pretty incredible, but they got nothing on Hoothoot in my mind. Are you familiar with Spinarak lore, folks? Spinarak, the spider Pokemon. A Pokemon nobody thinks about, a Pokemon nobody knows exists. But I do. And I know all about the inner machinations of this Pokemon's biology ever since I read the Pokédex entry after catching this in the video game. Did you know, according to the Pokédex, the web it spins can be considered its second nervous system? It is said that a Spinarak determines its prey by the tiny vibrations it feels through the web. Spinarak's web is a part of its actual body that has nerves in it. It's like a remote sensor that can... Spinarak could leave and go somewhere completely different and still feel what the web is feeling no matter where it is in the world. I consider that to be unbelievable, and this is why Spinarak has been given the new moniker, the Feeler, by the majority of society. The Feeler can feel things we couldn't hope to feel in our lifetimes. The Feeler is operating on a different level of sensory experience that is unfathomable. I don't know why, this might not be that crazy to you, but this filled me with a sense of cosmic horror, the fact that the web is feeling things. A web should not be part of an animal's, like an extension of themselves. It's frightening me to think about it. I have to move on now. Dodrio. You guys know Dodrio? This is actually my favorite Pokemon. I love three-headed bird. Big fan of it. So out of curiosity, I looked up the Pokédex. What's going on with Dodrio? What deeper meaning can there be behind Dodrio? This creature has hidden depths we never thought were possible. Well, in the Pokemon Sapphire game, it is said that apparently the heads are not the only parts of the body that Dodrio has three of. It has 3 sets of hearts and lungs as well, so it is capable of running long distances without rest. This is filling me with existential dread. There's, in that big ball in the middle of the Dodrio, that weird sphere, you tell me there's 3 hearts and lungs in there so that it can run faster and breathe more? I guess each head has its own heart and lung? Did they need to tell me this? Did this need to be illuminated to me? I was bought into the concept of three-headed bird to begin with. You don't need to tell me about the amount of hearts and lungs they have. I love how much these Pokédex entries go into detail about weird body parts, like an organ that exists to hoot, so that you can hoot at the right time. And we need to explain why Dodrio runs it only has a speed of 110. Where's the 3 hearts and lungs on Weavile, who has 120 speed? Can we explain that Pokemon franchise? Can we explain that one? Does Weavile have 10 hearts to be able to run faster than a Dodrio? I don't think so. I don't think this is adding up. Something tells me that there's no logical consistency to the heart-lung ratio to speed equation. Poliwag. Do you know Poliwag? Probably. Fairly famous Pokemon. But did you know that the spiral on it is yet another organ? What's up with all the organ specification here? They love organs. It's their favorite part of Pokemon lore. Because in Ruby and Sapphire Pokedex entry, Poliwag has a very thin skin. It is possible to see the Pokemon's spiral innards right through the skin. Despite its thinness, however, the skin is also very flexible. Even sharp fangs bounce right off of it. So the spiral on this is not a fun pattern that is aesthetic. It's a transparent creature and that's what it looks like on the inside. So I guess everything that this needs is contained within the spiral. The function of like a heart and lungs and perhaps a brain. Is it all just in the spiral? How did it form like that? What's the story behind this? Did this need to be the case? Was that the idea from inception when they came up with this Pokemon? Was that the spiral on it is actually its internal organs? And we're looking through like a window? I want to know more, and yet I really don't at the same time. I really don't. But I appreciate the nuance being added in the Ruby and Sapphire game. Thank you for this information. Bellibolt, you know this one? Maybe not. It's a new Pokemon, Gen 9 Pokemon. It's an electric frog-looking creature. You want to know something about Bellibolt? From Pokemon Violet, what appear to be eyeballs are actually organs for discharging the electricity generated by Bellibolt's belly button dynamo. Okay, we love our organs, don't we, folks? This one is an external organ, though, appearing like an eye that exists to handle the amount of electricity generated by Bellibolt. So I don't know where the eyes actually are on this guy. Are they just above the mouth? There's two little yellow bits. Those are the eyes. I don't know how to even perceive this Pokemon anymore because I thought that the eyeball looking things were its eyes. I was stupid to think so. And now I guess this is who it is, the little smiley face. That's who you are. I feel a bit betrayed by all of this, to be honest. I think I'm looking at something simple. Turns out it's an internal or perhaps an external organ in the Pokemon world. What isn't an organ? Tell me more about these organs, Pokemon. You want to be filled with existential dread, folks? Well, look no further. Metang. Metang, the second stage in the Metagross line. You know how this comes into existence? I'll tell you. Ruby Pokedex entry. When two Beldum fuse together, Metang is formed. The brains of the Beldum are joined by a magnetic nervous system. What does that mean? What is that? By linking its brains magnetically, this Pokemon generates strong psychokinetic power. So two of these fellas, the little Beldums, link together like a magnet and their brains fuse together, joined by a magnetic nervous system. They sacrifice their individuality to become something more. At least with Dodrio, each of the heads probably have a sense of independence. But in this case, these two Beldum are giving up their own personhood to become a Metang, which freaks me out a little bit conceptually. What about Metagross? What's the story behind Metagross then? Is that even more things are fusing into it? Metagross has 4 brains in total. What? Combined, the 4 brains can breeze through difficult calculations faster than a supercomputer. I'll tell you something, this does not add up with the reality that I experience in Gen 3OU, where Metagross, all this guy does is click Meteor Mash no matter what. I don't know if there's complex calculation going on there, mate. I think you're just clicking Mash and hoping for the attack raise, buddy. Or maybe you're clicking Explode and you KO Skarmory anyway, because you're a caveman with 100 million attack that KOs resistances. I've never seen a Metagross do any complex calculations in my experience, and I think my experience has some weight here. I should amend this one. I think there was more independent thought going on when it was a Beldum, personally. Kadabra. You know him. He evolves from Abra. He has a spoon. He's a psychic individual. Do you know about his backstory, though? This one is crazy, and I laughed out loud when I read it. This one is kind of hysterical, and also just an absurd thing to say. In Pokemon Legends Arceus, Pokedex entry for Kadabra, there are rumors that a child with mystical powers became a Kadabra. However, this remains unverified. I suspect that the spoon Kadabra holds enhances its brainwaves. What? How do we even pick this one apart here? So, you telling me, is the suggestion here that the first Kadabra to ever exist was a child who miraculously turned into a Kadabra that would then become an entire species of creature that also has a predecessor of Abra that evolves into itself? Okay, but or are you suggesting that Kadabras already existed in the world? It's as if, you know, like in our world, we have dogs are a creature that exist, and then one day a child transformed into a Kadabra miraculously, kind of like how in Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, our protagonist transforms into a giant cockroach with no explanation, sort of randomly. Is that what happened? Are we having a metamorphosis moment? Also, this remains unverified. Who the hell suggested this? And I think they're probably wrong about that, because that doesn't make any damn sense. We're saying that children can spontaneously turn into Pokemon? Who gets to submit these things to the Pokédex? There's no way this is true. There's no way. And the final line, I suspect that the spoon Kadabra holds enhances its brainwaves. All right. Thank you for the information. Can you go into more detail? Why do you think that? Are all of this particular Pokemon scientist's observations just based on vibes? I don't want to hear about what you suspect. Tell me a fact. Tell me about this guy's internal organs. He probably has an internal organ I don't know about. You could look into that for me, hopefully. What does the Pokemon professor from Legends Arceus have to say about Porygon, my favorite guy? Here's what they say. It has no discernible heartbeat and does not seem to draw breath, and yet it appears to function without issue. I cannot even begin to explain this utterly bizarre anomaly. We need to fire this guy. He doesn't know anything about Pokemon. What if you open a Wikipedia article about Genghis Khan or something, and then I do not know what this guy did. I'm not sure about him. He did some stuff, and I'll get back to you, but I'm not sure what exactly. Thank you, Pokédex. Thank you very much. Has anybody ever looked up the storyline of Bruxish? This is an unpopular Pokemon. Nobody likes this one. Weird fish with teeth on. What is your story, Bruxish? Tell me more. Here we have it. Bruxish grinds its teeth with great force to stimulate its brain. It fires the psychic energy created by this process from the protuberance on its head. I see. I do not envy whichever Game Freak worker was tasked with coming up with Bruxish storyline, but you did a pretty good job. That is, I've gained a new fondness for Bruxish and its place in the ecosystem of this. It grinds its teeth to stimulate its brain. Is that mewing? Is that what mewing is? I feel like I've heard people talk about that. That sounds like the same thing to me. And then a protuberance on your head forms and you earn psychic energy. That's why they do that, right? I'm gonna say that's correct. Banette is one of my favorite Pokemon. A ghost-type puppet creature with a zipper mouth. Love it? I'll tell you all about its Gen 3 OU niche if you ask nicely. I know all about that. But what about its storyline? What's the story behind you, Banette? This is a famous one. I actually know about this one a little bit vaguely. What do they say about it? From Pokemon Emerald. An abandoned plush doll became this Pokemon. They are said to live in garbage dumps and wander about in search of the children that threw them away. It also says that strong feelings of hatred turned a puppet into a Pokemon. If it opens its mouth, its cursed energy escapes. I really like this one actually. This is a fun horror concept. You could make a film about this, about the Banette. The abandoned toy that got possessed by a spirit of pure hatred, searching for the child that threw it away. Isn't this the storyline of Jessie from Toy Story 2? I suppose she wasn't upset about it and enacting revenge, but she was left with an emotional scar. Maybe Banette can calm down a little bit. It's just a child. Maybe you weren't a very good plush toy, Banette. Maybe you weren't very good. Maybe you were low quality. I feel like these ones, though, they raise questions that I don't think are supposed to be asked. Like, Banette is not just a possessed plush toy. It's a species that exists and has, like, evolutionary lines. And also, you can breed it with other Pokemon and stuff. Now, how the hell does that all work? I don't think I'm supposed to think about that. I've asked too many questions. I think I've figured out who it was that threw Banette away, folks. I think it was Pursuit Tyranitar from Gen 3. Because that's the guy that Banette is always trying to hit with Hidden Power Fighting for super effective damage after one spike, putting it into range. You know what I mean, folks? I'm pretty sure that's evidence that it was Tyrannosif who did this. Speaking of Tyranitar as a child, you know Larvitar? Baby version of Tyranitar? This guy has an absurd Pokedex entry that quite frankly doesn't add up. Here it is from Pokemon Gold version. It feeds on soil. After it has eaten a large mountain, it will fall asleep so it can grow. So you're telling me for every Tyranitar I've seen on the Gen 3 ladder that each one of those had to eat an entire mountain to be able to grow into a Tyranitar? I think if that's the case, first of all, that's absurd, and second of all, how come there's still mountains? Have you ever thought of this? Something tells me the guy who wrote this didn't really think about the implications of what they were saying for the ecosystem. We need one mountain per Pupitar, minimum? I mean, probably they gotta eat multiple mountains. It sounds like one mountain a night. There are not that many mountains to go around. There's a shortage of mountains, probably more Pupitars than mountains. I'm furious about this, I don't know about you folks. Are you familiar with Spoink, folks? I hope you are. Beautiful Pokemon, little pig bouncy spring with a sphere on top. Spoink has yet another Pokedex entry related to an internal organ, but this one is not a happy, funny story. This is rather a tragedy. From Pokemon Ruby, Spoink bounces around on its tail. The shock of its bouncing makes its heart pump. As a result, this Pokemon cannot afford to stop bouncing. If it stops, its heart will stop. If Spoink ever stops bouncing, it will die, folks. I wonder if they started with the concept of Spoink always bouncing and then they had to figure out a logical reason for it to always be bouncing. Oh, I've got it. If it stops bouncing, it will die instantly. Now, nobody will ask us why he's bouncing all the time. This was a forward-thinking Pokédex entry. They knew the number one question on people's minds when Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire released would be, why is Spoink always bouncing? When will he take a break? When will he stop? To which the developers say no, he will never stop, or else. I wonder if any Spoinks, upon evolving into a Grumpig, Maybe they're so used to bouncing all the time, the rat race, the constant movement and the constant effort, that when they finally get a chance to relax, they no longer have to bounce all the time. They can actually take a rest for the first time. I wonder if any of them are reflexively still bouncing because they've been so conditioned to do so. Do you think that any Grumpigs have been caught bouncing around even though their heart can pump on its own now? They've moved past that? They've moved on to the next stage? Do you think that trauma carries with them into Grumpighood? I think it could. I think that's very possible. Does Grumpig have any interesting lore? I bet it's just boring. I bet it's like, this is a pig that's completely unremarkable, but it has psychic powers. What do they say about Grumpig? Grumpig uses the black pearls on its body to wield its fantastic powers. When it is doing so, it dances bizarrely. This Pokemon's black pearls are valuable as works of art. What? Love the writing, by the way. Fantastic powers. That's damn true. You're telling me people harvest the pearls on the Grumpig as valuable works of art? Or does he just have a surplus and he's giving them away? Ethically, I don't know about taking the pearl on the Grumpig. How else is it going to wield its fantastic powers? I wonder if there are Grumpig farms in the Pokemon world where they harvest the black pearls. And there's just a bunch of Spoinks and they say, keep jumping, become a Grumpig already. And then once they do, it's pearl harvesting time. My goodness, this has more moral implications than I realized. Gengar is one of the icons of the Pokemon franchise, the quintessential ghost type, and many people are aware of this Pokemon's Pokedex entries. It can live inside of shadows and stalk humans with ill intent. It also siphons the heat around it, creating a chill. How frightening. But there's more to Gengar than that. There's a variety in different Pokedex entries for this. In Pokemon Moon, this one caught my eye. It reads as follows. Gengar apparently wishes for a traveling companion, since it was once human itself. It tries to create one by taking the lives of other humans. They're just going to casually drop that in there. Gengar was once human itself. That's a declarative statement. This is a fact. This is the first I'm hearing of it. This is yet another example of a human becoming a different species that exists. I mean, imagine reading the Wikipedia article for crocodile and it says like, since it was once human itself, it chases humans and attempts to eat them to get a taste of what it once was, to siphon their energy. Oh, alright. And does the Gengar have its human memories? Does the Gengar have a human consciousness? What are the moral implications of me capturing a Gengar and grinding on Caterpies to the extent that it has enough HP EVs so that it can live a +1 Dragon Dance Salaman's Hidden Power Flying? Should I be doing that to another former human? Is that morally okay? Hey, former human, please kick an explosion for momentum so that I can win this Pokemon battle. Please blow up for me, former human. I think that we all have to stop using Gengar on our teams because I don't know if that's acceptable stuff to be doing. And to finish things off on a high note, why not take a look at the storyline behind the most beloved Pokemon in history? I'm talking, of course, about Iron Jugulis, the #1 ranked Pokemon worldwide in terms of general positive sentiment. This is Hydreigon, but it's a robot. It's genius all around. The name Iron Jugulis was voted the most elegant of all Pokemon names by popular vote. It's undeniable. The data is all there. So is there a logical explanation for the existence of this creature? I would love to know, and today I will find out. In Pokemon Scarlet, we have the following Pokedex entry. It resembles a certain Pokemon introduced in a paranormal magazine, described as the offspring of a Hydreigon that fell in love with a robot. My goodness, this whole Pokemon really was made in 5 seconds, wasn't it? Including the Pokedex entry. What the hell is this? Hydreigon had a child with a robot. That's what you've come up with. That's why this creature exists, huh? He's called Iron Jugulis. Look, okay. I'm not going to say anything more. I hope that whoever came up with that gets promoted and has more creative control come Gen 10, because, of course, that's one of the most inspired things I have ever read. It's a genius origin story for one of the icons of our time, Iron Jugulis. Every good mascot and character needs a good origin story, and Iron Jugulis delivered. It did. There were so many twists and turns on this origin story. There were such a subversion of expectations. No one could have predicted the way Iron Jugulis came into existence. And on that note, thank you all for watching. Bit of an experimental video. Let me know what you thought. I'd be happy to do more of this if you liked it, and I'll catch you later.